So the topic was how to move from Freewrite to completed project. And I hope I can give you some pointers today. So what makes a project finished? Finished. I'm not even going to say book because it doesn't have to be a book, right? So, I have students who published books. I have as I mentioned earlier, this was finished. It was completely finished, right? And then the publisher, originally he said he wasn't going to do any color photos, and then put a bunch of color photos in, and he said now it made it too expensive, so he let it go out of print. It sold like 6,000 copies, but he let it go out of print. So I was like, oh no. So then it was unfinished again. So on the other hand, there's something like this. I want to show you this. This is a very beautiful, one-of-a-kind handmade book made by one of the people I profiled. If you know my book, The Abundance of Less, this is Mr. Nakamura in Chapter 2. And basically what he did is he had us do little drawings and then write down some words. And it was from a Freewrite. I did a writing journey to rural Japan, and each person got a page for their images, or two pages, and then he bound it together in a book. There's a single copy, so that's finished. It was like Freewrites. Maybe they revised them once, put some images in, learned to bookbind. Book is done. Here's another little book by my friend John Gibler, Gather. Beautiful little format, just 2 staples. And incredible poetry. He's a journalist in Mexico covering the drug war, but this is his poems. Here is another example. These are, 2 haiku books. I'll show you one of them at a time. Met some guy who at the Japanese Cultural Fair, and he loved haiku, and he basically wrote the haiku, and he cut the letters. He was a jeweler. He cut the letters out of metal and then put them on a plate. And so he put a lot of time into it, but every last one of them is handmade. So he hand printed them. And then you have everything from like a little pamphlet like this. This is The Art of Living, Vipassana Meditation. You say, that's not a book. That's not a project. But this little, before the age of the internet, I've had this since late 80s, early 90s. Tens of thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands of people have decided to join this wonderful meditation teacher's work just from a simple little project like this. So first thing I want to say about completing a project is you don't have to make it like I got a contract with HarperCollins, and that's the only thing that'll make me happy. So I'm going to say that a book that is bound together is a completed project. It doesn't mean it can't be changed but this is actually my manuscript for my novel, but this could be like, I'm done. And I'm going to send this to Labris. Labris, hey, here's my book. Wow, you wrote a book? Yeah, Labris, you have to read it. Here it is. I'll send it to you. You can read it. That's it. Okay. I get that we are in a star-studded system of like million sellers and Nobel Prizes and Pulitzer Prizes and amazingness, and that can be extremely toxic. But there's a lot of ways to get things out there. Sending emails out to friends. This is my project. Putting something up on SoundCloud, which is a recording platform. I do that pretty frequently. I record a Freewrite, upload it, send the link to my friends, and they can listen to it or not. This is another book written by another one of my students. This is Presenting Virtually by Patty Sanchez. I actually didn't participate in this book. She works for a company called Duarte Consulting, and and she, did it through her company. And it's actually quite a useful book on like doing what I'm doing now, making a presentation online. And then, here's the Fine Artists book. This is like just gorgeously printed, right? You know all this, but maybe you don't. Book Arts is beautiful. There's the Center for the Book in San Francisco, and lots of book artists, and limited edition. It's limited. Oh my God, I want to get one. There's only 50 copies. Oh my God, it's $100. It's $100, but there's only 2 left. I'm going to buy it. So lots of different ways to do that. And then we have 2 books by a person who is now oh, actually, let me, one more thing. This is my brother, my older brother, amazing poet. He sends stuff out. I think it's a lot better than the stuff I see. And I read a lot of poetry books that I see published. This is something he published, he just typed it up, I think on a typewriter, copied it, put it in a binder, and it says, poems selected for family and friends, John Couturier. And I have a copy, and my brothers and sisters have a copy, my dad, my mom, that's it. It's incredible. It's an incredible book. Okay, so then we have the other end of the spectrum. And I chose these two books. They're both by Marilyn Paul because I think it illustrates something important to think about in this process. So the first one is called It's Hard to Make a Difference When You Can't Find Your Keys by Marilyn Paul. So this came out in 2002. Great title. I read a few pages online on the Amazon site, and I was like, oh my God, this is great. I need this book. Turns out that this sold like in its first year, and Marilyn did no publicity, she told me, 175,000 copies, which is like huge. It was the right zeitgeist, the right time, and it's really well written. So how do you know that's going to happen, right? That's the grail, right? That's the gold standard, getting that kind of book out there. So they wanted her to write another book. And she's like, well, I don't really have another book. I have a blog post. And they read the blog post, and they're like, well, you know what? It's a book, so write it as a book. So this is her second book. This is an incredibly valuable book to me. It's called An Oasis in Time, and it's about taking a Shabbat. I find this incredibly valuable book. Now, Marilyn told me that it was published by Rodale Press right at the time that Rodale was being bought by Penguin Random House. So it sort of got lost in the cracks, and it didn't get publicized. I think it's a pretty weak cover myself, and it's an incredible book. I don't think it even sold 1,000 copies. You're not in control of that. That's not your business. You can affect it, maybe, but if you're only going to be happy if you sell 1,000,000 copies, you're setting yourself up for misery, and you won't enjoy the process. So the first thing is think about different ways that you can. I think one more example. It's more or less similar. I have a fourth book called Much that actually is a lot of different free writes that I put together from a lot of different locations. And I'm sure I'll find it here in this pile at some point. But I just never felt like it was time to get it through the publishing process, which I'm going to get to at the end of this talk. So just really start to open your eyes and open your mind to a lot of different ways of publishing. And I'm going to talk later about like pros and cons of that publishing thing. But just what completes, what makes it finished, that's it's a deep psychological process that interacts with our society and the values of our society, some of them good, a lot of them bad. So here's the second metaphor for you. Well, this is actually more of a metaphor than the first one. Cool stick, huh? This is manzanita. So you ever walk along a beach and you pick up a piece of driftwood and you're like, wow, this is beautiful. And you're walking with your friend and you show it to your friend, wow, it's super beautiful. Wow, it's beautiful. And you put it back down. That's one way to write. Maybe you're not even with a friend. Just do a free write. Read it out loud to yourself. Read it silently to yourself. You're done. I have hundreds of free writes like that. I'm okay with that. But there's the people who gather driftwood and make them into structures or pieces of art on the beach so other people can see them. And it's there until some teenage boy knocks it down or the ocean and it's gone. But at least a few people saw it, right? And there is, of course, taking it home, putting it on your mantelpiece or your altar to show to other people. This is metaphor for writing, by the way, right? You show it to a few people, and it's good. I'm going through this slowly, even though you probably know where I'm going, for you to kind of just think about what do you really want to have happen with your book, even if you're not sure yet. So you might make a chair or a stool out of it. Or, and I'm using the example of my partner, Cynthia, who is has spent many years, is not currently doing that, making driftwood furniture. So I'm going to share that with you. So what she did is made them so that people could sit on them so they would last for a long time, so that she could go to the Apple Blossom Festival, or she could go to, had an open studios experience. So that is another way to go about it. And then she got one of them into like a Pasadena museum of art, curated by a very famous furniture maker. And that's this next, but there's more stress with that, right? And there's more like expectation with it, and there's sort of harder to get in, right? And then there's like, you want to make your whole life around it. I want to be a published author. I want to make my entire living lecturing, readings, selling. It's pretty difficult to do these days, and you have to make a lot of compromises, but just kind of think that none of them are bad, right? Picking up a piece of driftwood on the beach is not a bad thing. Okay, so where are we going to start? We're going to start with determination. Looks like I got a couple of chats. Let me just check the chats here if people have asked questions. Okay. Okay, nothing right now. Rayal, you asked about recording, and you can either just record on your phone or you can wait until this is up on YouTube. Sorry I didn't handle that question earlier because it's a little too complicated for me to get the permission out for that. All right, so I'm going to talk for a few more minutes, and then you guys can do a minute or two of free writing for yourself on this. Determination. So as I said, I'm almost having finished my 5th manuscript. I really, really want finished books. I really am an enthusiastic person. I can draw on my strength of being an eager puppy. I want to write books, and I want to get them out there, and I want to share them with people. Different ways to do that. One is making a vision for yourself. Go ahead and use your New Age techniques of like, what does this, why do I want to do this? And you can do anything from creative visualization to just white knuckles. I'm going to do this no matter what. Ambition can be helpful. Ambition can be a trap, right? Oh, I'm only going to feel good if I can go to my high school reunion and say, well, when I published my 2nd book, and they're like, you published your 2nd book. But it might work to get it done. It's like, I want to get my thing out before I pass away. So that's another one, fear. So I actually wrote Writing Open the Mind, the happiest book I've ever written, saying, I'm afraid of dying before this gets out. It's 15 years later, still haven't died. Statistics show that I probably will die, so I scared myself. Even a super happy book, I just got the fire under my butt that I did not want my gravestone to say he died with his manuscript unfinished. So you can use fear to build your determination. You need some God damn it, I want to do this. You can pull on love of art. I love doing it, and I just love the art of getting something out so much. It depends upon who you are. So that's why in Book Completion Group, it's very individualized. I don't generally give this kind of lecture in my Book Completion Group. It's just like, how can I help you? How can I help you? Because it's different for every person. But it might be a love for the art or just a belief in quality. I just believe in making something good. I don't want to make something, quote, bad. Now, that's a very big trap too, right? Oh, it's bad. I'll deal with that in a little bit. But either way, I super encourage you to enjoy the process or even fetishize the process. Okay, so it's basically a difference between pleasure and punishment. So we have been taught in the American school system, and many of you have gone through that punishing and the castor oil syndrome, as they called it. Like, if it doesn't taste bad, you're not learning anything, right? So that often you got other things to do in your life than, slap that ruler on your own wrist. Bad. So I have a whole curriculum on depathologizing the writing process, and I am going to get into that a little bit tonight. So I'm going to pause for a second, for maybe 2 minutes, just to give you a see that, like, for example, Susan's taking notes. So you can talk back to yourself. So whatever came up for you with what I just said, if you want to just jot down your response to it, this is just for you. We're not going to read it aloud to each other, but just a sense of me not talking the whole time and giving you a chance to metabolize what it is and perhaps set a goal for yourself or have some self-reflection. So I think I'll do about 2 minutes of that. It's 8:05, so until about 8:07, just quietly. And again, if you want to chat, send me a chat message, you can do that. Okay, take a second for yourself here. Okay, part two. So we've already covered just what does make. Oops, sorry, excuse me. I have to unmute myself. So we're back. Okay, I've got a question. Can we talk about the fear of finishing a project? Seems all my projects are 3/4 finished. Okay, I will do that. I think I'm going to wait until a little bit more, but thanks for the question, Susan. Susan's question is, can you talk about the fear of finishing a project? Seems like all my projects are 3/4 finished. Okay, I do know that one. All right, so many people have over the years, until I basically said, I can't really manage your to-do list. Many people are like, oh, I really want to write, but I got to do this, I got to do this, I got to do the other thing, and the other thing. And I just want to say, you need the time. You need the time. You need to make the time to work on it, one way or the other. Now, if you have a sick parent or three small children, it's harder, but it's, and I don't know what the conditions of your life are. So, what kind of time? Chris Deliani, one of my students from back in the 90s, he works in the financial district and he wakes up super early, and from 4 to 6:30, you've always heard about this, right? That's the only way to write. Be careful of the only way to write. But for him, that works. So you really ought to know yourself. What has allowed you to finish projects in the past? Um, I happen to follow you, Susan, by the way, on Facebook, and I see your beautiful drawings of Mexico. They're finished and they're published. So I don't know. That might be like knowing yourself. What allows you to do that? What allows you to be like, okay, this drawing's done. I'm gonna put it up on Facebook and let people enjoy it. So knowing what's already worked for yourself. For me, that regularity or early in the morning, I can't do it. I hate mornings. I am a night owl, and I need big chunks of time. So I plan retreats and I make sure that if I can, once a year, I do that. And I've actually tried to set up my life as much as possible, including not having kids as part of that, and also not taking on big responsibilities or like a huge mortgage or all these things that then require you to lose time so that I can write books. That's just the way I've managed to set up my life, and I've been fortunate enough and privileged enough in this world of plunder called the United States of America to be able to do that. So cherishing that time and making those retreats. People say, oh, I'm just so busy next week. Okay, it's very difficult to make time. This is one of my axioms. It's very difficult to make time tomorrow or next week, but it's a lot easier to make time 3 months from now. Make yourself a whole week or 2 weeks. So using planning, and I say this as somebody who's terrible at planning, and I really struggle. I mean, just scheduling a phone call just stresses me out completely, but somehow I've just white knuckled, made sure I planned. Don't take on a lot of stuff. and then you're going to fall off the wagon and get too busy again, because that's the kind of culture it is. It has all kinds of announcements, and people call you and something interesting and something sexy to do. I want to go there and climb that mountain, or hang glide, or learn Serbo-Croatian, or whatever it is that gets exciting for you, and all of a sudden you're too busy again. So just next point is set and reset. Reset, and it goes back to that determination. And as I mentioned, you could get sick, or someone close to you could get sick. So just really being realistic that this, if you do have the time and the money at the same time, seize the freaking day. Do it if you care about it. Now, next big point is you have to be able to tolerate the unknown. Tolerance for the unknown. Where's this going? Who's going to read it? Will everybody finish it? Am I smart enough? All of that stuff. You got to be able to build your tolerance, because we're living in a world. You remember, most of you, I think, remember then you couldn't Google something, right? You're just like, well, I don't know, right? I don't know why that is, or how that happens, or what's happening with that pumpkin out there. But now that you can find out so many things, I think we have a much lower tolerance for the unknown. And the tolerance for the unknown is the prerequisite to finishing anything. There's a John Keats quote in his letter to Coleridge. Should I say that in British accent? John Keats, in his letter to Coleridge in 1804, talked about the negative capability. Look it up. Negative capability. Maybe I'll try to share it with you. I can find it next time I pause. Negative capability is being able to hang out in those unknowns, not itching constantly, irritably, trying to get certainty. This is a fantastic book on that topic, Art and Fear. This book, I got so in love with, and it turned out he lived in Santa Cruz, met the guy himself. This book sells 5,000 copies a month. Not that that matters, right? Because it just happens to be, it worked that way. But it's got a lot of great advice on working with them. Like, it's not as my writing's not as beautiful as I imagined it to. It's got some great advice on that. I'll read a little passage from this later, but it's really about building up. Like, I don't know what's going to happen with the book. I don't know if I'll get a publisher. I don't know where it's going. I don't. So be careful of these how to write books, because most of them are one size fits all. It's like actually Marilyn's book about it's hard to make a difference when you can't find your keys. I'm a very disorganized person. I'm a little better than I used to be. I read 20 books on how to get organized, but they were all written by people who were already organized, right? Marilyn actually is kind of a disorganized person, so this was actually super helpful. But most books on how to write are written by someone who's figured out how they write. And then they say, you know what you need to do? You need to do it the way I do it. And see, I can tell you, you got to do it the way. And I wish it was that easy. Then I just tell you how to do it. Lots of people make money selling those kind of books. But beware of them, because you're like, that doesn't sound like me. All those organizing books never helped me at all, because they were one size fits all. This is a book about being aware of your own patterns and seeing what you can do within that. So be careful of those books. Okay, so this may be the biggest thing I have to say about it, and then I'll give you guys another pause. The bottleneck and kick the can. I'll say that again. The bottleneck and the kick the can. There are a lot of operations involved in writing a book. There are a lot of operations involved writing a book, and I'm going to list some of them in the time remaining. But if you try to do them all at once, you'll be overwhelmed and you'll get stuck, because there'll be a bottleneck. So you have to figure out what comes first and what comes later. And as I said in the announcement for this class, most of it can come later. So kick the can down the alleyway. Deal with it later. Now, if you're worried you're going to forget, which I do, make a little note. Make a little note in the margin of the document. Make a little note on an index card that you won't lose. But basically, you need an uncluttered mind for a lot of these practices. Say a revising practice, or an editing part of this, or a visioning part of it, or character building, or reaching out to publishers. All these different aspects of writing a book. And if you try to do them all at once, you will short circuit. So, ask yourself, can I put this off? And if the answer is yes, then put it off. I will say that from the beginning, that's the free writing part, is taking these nuggets and getting real richness going, finding stuff that matters to you, and then gathering it together and seeing how they relate. That's the thing you want to do first. And be in a pleasure state and find out what you really care about. Everything else can wait. Okay, this is actually a lot to say in like how do you sequence this, and I can't get into it with a short amount of time. But don't be nitpicky. That's another axiom for you. Don't be nitpicky at the start. And try to find, there's perfectionism, right? We all know that that's a problem. It's not good enough. It's not good enough. It's not good enough. It's not good enough. So maybe that's similar to what you're talking about, Susan. It's not good enough, right? But then there's also whateverism. So there's a writer who is just like, what the hell? I've got hell with it. So that's okay, But I read that person's book and you could tell the person was whatever. So you need to be somewhere in between that. Okay, I'm going to take a short pause. I'll find that Keats quote for you. Give you guys another couple minutes to just write down any responses. And if there's time at the end, anyone can share from that wants to. But just a time to see if you want to metabolize or maybe make some commitments to yourself on the paper. So again, I'll give you a couple minutes for that and then give you part 3. Okay, part 3 here. I'm going to have to, I've got still a little bit more to cover, quite a bit more to cover. So we'll see how we go with time here. Let me handle a couple questions here because I want to make sure that I honor that. So Susan, I have to say I don't have that fear myself of finishing. So if you do have a fear of finishing, it might be interesting to just do a free write about what that is about and be as honest with yourself as you possibly can. And maybe look into historical stuff with your own life, or perhaps even epigenetically with your family. Have people been punished for finishing or getting things out there in the world? Have you, perhaps? Really examining where that's coming from. Maybe the 3/4 project you bind up and you hand to a good friend, and then you see what fears actually come up, and then do a free write about it and be like, can you hand that back to me? I'm ready to finish it now. But again, it's a self-inquiry process. I have a fear of not finishing, so I unfortunately don't have a quick answer to you on that. Okay, I have another person who has asked about publishing. Mark, I believe Mark is still here tonight. Um, if he's not, I probably won't. Mark, are you still here? Yes, good. So, Mark, can you raise your hand if you're like cool with me reading the question out loud to the group? Good. All right. So, Mark sent me an email question. Um, Curious for your advice about traditional publishers versus self-publishing. Um, okay. Do have that down on my notes. Skeptical about finding a publisher willing to promote my work. Well, that's the unknown. I really, yeah, all I can say is that you just make the damn best book proposal you can possibly make, and it looks like you do have some people that are famous or relatively famous who can blurb the book. A lot of the book proposal process, and I am going to treat this later, is is just doing your homework. So I don't do a lot of like how to get published because so many people have done it and there's so many websites, and literally it's just about doing your homework. Now some of my writing students are just take to that like a fish to water. They just read everything about it and they, punch it out, and some people just they can't even do a little research on it, and that's a psychological thing that just people are different. The question about the self-publishing a first edition could build momentum for a larger second edition. I have generally had the experience of people saying that if it's already out there as a self-published book, even if it only was like 10 or 20 copies. Now, I'm not saying this is always true, but I know that 2 or 3 of my students have tried that strategy, and publishers have turned it down for that reason because it's sort of already out there. I think that's ridiculous. And I've also read stories about people having really, really big successes with self-publishing, and then the publishers want to come get the help. But I have found a couple people who really regretted that they did if they wanted a big, big press, that because then you're dependent on whether you do or don't develop the momentum. And I think, Mark, what I'm going to do is there's a lot to your question. If you can hang out afterwards, I want to help you in more detail. So I'd be happy to do that. But I want to keep going with the thing that I prepared. So I hope that's okay. And if there's something that's absolutely crucial and you can't hang out afterwards, just put that as a short question in the chat window for me. Okay. Next part. Free writing to rich bits. Okay, so here's the list. Generating with, I actually did a little drawing of this, which is centrifugal force. This is what the Freewrite was today. Centrifugal force in my lovely handwriting. Just blow it out and just get out of the way. Just kind of throw the confetti to the wind and just make things happen. And hopefully you'll stumble upon something that's interesting that you didn't expect to write. And then you go back to the centripetal force. So with the Freewrite that you guys did tonight, you can even begin this. I'm going to tell you how to do it, but we're not going to do it together. You can take these 3 Freewrites you did tonight and again underline phrases, but you're not limited to 5, as many as you want. And then instead of randomly putting them together, using your left brain to arrange them together, right? And that's like pulling it back together. And again, if you just start with that centrifugal force in the first place, often you get stuck. So I think the centripetal force and like blowing out, not knowing where you're going, getting yourself into a kind of an agog, A-G-O-G, agog state until you can stumble upon something that you didn't know you were going to write is pretty crucial. And that's why I emphasize the Freewrite. So I have stumble, scramble, juxtapose, prism, P-R-I-S-M, move around your house, move your body, go out into the natural world. So these are all these different exercises in writing open the mind. And by the way, I have a free class that you can take online. I'll share that in the chat window in a little bit. So once you do that, then you find these bits, these rich bits, and here, step 1, find the bits. Step 2, sequence them. Step 3, expand on them. I'm oversimplifying, yes. And then connect them together. So find the bits, sequence them, expand on them, and then connect them together. Or not. Some people over connect. They like, do you know why this causes this? Let me tell you that this thing that I'm saying now is connected to this. Get it? This second one is connected to the first one. It actually, you're so worried. Some people, and it's okay, but many people are so worried about it's all over the place, it's random, it's disconnected. You're not trusting the reader to make their own connections. So again, this find the bits, the sequence, the expand, the connect. That's the old model for process writing. Turns out, I found out in my writing master's program that that's not the way people write. Actually, people are doing free writing up until the last minute, and people are doing micro editing in the beginning. So it's all mixed up throughout the whole process. It's a general arc, but it's not that sort of like dunk, dunk, dunk. That's not the way people write. Okay, so then you organize your document. So I have a YouTube clip, 25 minutes on how to organize random pieces that you have and try to put them together. And I will also share that with you. So basically, it's putting index cards out. I'm not sure if Cynthia Coppola is still here, but Cynthia went through some of my book completion groups and used that method to create a sequence for her book. Many people have done it. It works for some books better, works for some people better. Some people like a more traditional Roman numeral outline. But the main thing when you're organizing your book is, are you ready for this word? Keyword, seduction. Seducing your reader to keep reading. The main thing about the sequence of your book is that you get people to keep reading. So you have to keep creating this, like, what's going to happen next? Or why did he mean that? Or why did she say that? Or where's this going? So that they'll keep turning pages. Now, it may be just because your writing is so beautiful and interesting, your ideas are so interesting, they keep turning pages, whatever way you organize it. So sometimes it's not that important how you organize it. So there's different ways to organize your book, and I have like a whole curriculum on that too. But it could be logically, right? You're building a logical argument. It could be plot, right? This happened, then this happened, then this happened, and you might have some flash forwards and flashbacks, etc. But it's still like, narrative, story, grammar. And then there's baskets, right? The 5 reasons that too much noise in our society is destroying our culture and destroying ourselves. And reason 1, reason 2, reason 3, reason 4. So that's the baskets. Problem with baskets is there's no sort of impelling. It's like, yeah, okay, there's no reason to keep reading forward except to find out what's in the next basket. There's no sort of, but many books are organized that way, and you've probably read a lot of them, and some of them you might have finished. But whatever your organization is, give it some format and then revisit it again and again, because it's going to change. All right. Well, I don't think I'm going to get through everything I have to say tonight. I think I'm going to have to maybe make a second part. Okay, I'm going to promise you guys I'm going to finish this as a 2-part video, and I'll make sure I get everyone who's in this group will get a link to the second part, which I will definitely record and definitely upload. Let me see. Where do I want to... Keeping your I'm just going to give you the outline of it because I don't have time for the whole talk. This is always my problem. I run out of time at the end. Keeping your project papers and files organized. So I don't like doing that. This is where the id gets in the way. I don't want to, the little baby, I don't want to keep it. Where is that thing? Sometimes you just have to adult and just be like, okay, I've got 6 different versions, 6 different drafts. Dealing with distractions, there's the obvious distractions, and then the not obvious ones, like, more research. I need to do more research. Different ways we self-sabotage, the role of other people. There's a lot to say on that. Different views on revising and rewriting and revisiting and editing, and I'll share some of my tricks that I've used. And then interacting with the publishing world. And I have a lot to say about different aspects of why it can be an excellent choice to self-publish. and what's really good about that, and why it can be actually quite bad to have a huge press. I've heard some horror stories. So it's not something that's just like it's bigger, it's better. All right, we are at 8:30 and